Richard Mack is an author, speaker, and former Arizona sheriff. He was named elected official of the year by the Arizona-New Mexico Coalition of Counties in 1994. He received the NRA Law Officer of the Year, was inducted into the NRA Hall of Fame. He was the recipient of the 1995 Cicero Award, Samuel Adams Leadership Award from the Local Sovereignty Coalition, and Gun Owners of America Defender of the Second Amendment Award, among many others. Richard and 6 other sheriffs from across the U.S. challenged the constitutionality of the mandatory background check Brady bill. They fought it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they won a monumental decision for freedom. He is the author of The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, From My Cold Dead Fingers, after which a great song was written, and The Proper Role of Law Enforcement. He has visited with us before and hopefully will continue to do so. Let's welcome back to the Global Freedom Report, Sheriff Richard Mack. Richard, how are you?
Well, doing really well, Brent. Thanks for having me back on. It's always good to be with you.
It's always a pleasure. It's been about 3 months since you were last with us. Have you noticed any measurable changes to, let's call it, the American cultural landscape from a freedom perspective?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I am both encouraged and dismayed. Encouraged that there are sheriffs and local officials starting to get it and wake up that Washington, D.C. is a complete write-off, too corrupt, too bought and paid for any reasonable thinking American to believe that we could find any semblance of freedom in that cesspool ever again, as long as our country shall live. But at the same time, if you look at all the corruption among the candidates, I mean, Michelle Bachmann, she used to be the Tea Party favorite, or the what do you want to call it? If you're the
front runner?
Oh, darling. The darling of the Tea Party. Yeah, she used to be the darling. I'm going to say the beauty pageant winner of the Tea Party movement, but Sarah Palin might be jealous of that. But, I mean, Michelle Bachmann can't even tell the truth about 2 simple questions that she has talked about a great deal. And, I mean, she looks just like a typical Washington, D.C. politician. I'm extremely disappointed in her. I could not vote for her now. I cannot believe that she thinks she has to compete with the rest of these dishonest politicians by acting like a dishonest politician.
It's what you're describing is what Judge Andrew Napolitano, I call him America's favorite judge. He's certainly mine. What Judge Andrew has said, that's called Potomac fever, because she says some really good people, I mean, with really honest-to-God good intentions, go into Washington and they become something ugly. He calls it Potomac fever.
Yeah, and I think the judge is right. I've been on his show several times, and he's my favorite judge, but he's also my favorite commentator. I mean, he tells it like it is. He brings everything back to the Constitution. He is a stalwart on the issues of freedom, and I don't think he calls himself a libertarian, but I guarantee you, he is a libertarian. I mean, he believes in getting government out of our lives, off our backs, follow the Constitution strictly, or go home.
Oh yeah, he's on the very short list as guest hosts for this show, and that you got to really have libertarian principles. And, you got to believe in freedom in order to do that. Hey, I just discovered that you wrote a novel. I never knew that you wrote fiction. You wrote a book called The Naked Spy, A Tale of Intrigue and Deception, featuring Agent Joshua Robert. And when did you write this? It looks like a James Bondish novel.
It is, very much so. And it was about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, that I finished it. And I actually got the idea to do that back in like 1980 when I was a rookie cop. And some of the things that are in the book are actually nonfiction. The story is fiction. But a lot of things that I put in the book actually happened to me while I was a cop. And it's an amazing story, and I really have the goal to make it a movie sometime.
Oh, I got to get a copy of this. Where do you get it?
Yeah, I can send you one.
Oh, I'd love that. Where do other people get it?
SheriffMack.com. Yeah, anybody can get it right there. Sheriff Mack.
Yeah, well, please do. I would love to see that. Sheriff Richard Mack. I call him an American patriot. I've known Richard now for, 10 years, 12 years, something like that. And I say that by his actions, not by his word. He is an American patriot. Richard, it's so good to have you here. It's getting really, a matter of concern, I think. Riots are breaking out around the world. I just did a story about riots in, of all places, China. Earlier, there were the British riots. You travel extensively around the United States, and you talk to a lot of Americans. Do you believe the American people are getting to a point where they're going to start rioting?
Well, not the people that I associate with. No, they won't. But the people that we see rioting in other places, and especially right now in Philadelphia, and the gang activity, they're getting more disenfranchised, especially the poor populations. Inner city youth gangs are feeling more and more disenfranchised by what's going on. They feel a bigger disconnect between themselves and government, even if they are on the dole. In fact, I believe that causes more frustration. People who are on unemployment or people who have nowhere else to go, they're going to be doing these sort of things because there's the disconnect between them and success and the American dream is getting wider and wider. And I also believe that when you see like what happened in Wisconsin, when a good governor who looks at the economic crisis that we're going through and has to tell the truth to people instead of like the liars in Washington who tell us, no, we will continue to give you free money. We will raise the debt ceiling, and we will continue to give you all the entitlements that you are owed, that we promised you. And so you don't have Republicans or Democrats in Washington that are being honest enough with the people and saying, look, we were wrong. We shouldn't have been spending this money. We shouldn't have made these promises to you. And even to continue with Medicaid and Medicare alone is like a $40 trillion commitment. And the entire wealth of our country is $20 trillion. We're in debt right now, according to their own statistics, over 75% of our national monetary wealth. If you took every penny from every citizen in this country, added all the wealth together, it would be about 20 trillion. And so we're about 80% of that now in debt. But if you really took all the numbers to what we've really committed, it's more like 90 trillion. And those things are starting to worry about. The thing in Wisconsin, what we saw are teachers and other people who said, and the unions who said, you can't do this to us. You find the money. The money's there. We don't believe this stuff about what? No money? Are you trying to tell us there's really no money? How could you say there's no money? Because there's no money. And you see, the states have to balance their budgets, and of course the federal government does not. And so they're going to continue to buy off voters and to position themselves for re-election. Well, and that is the only thing they care about in Washington, D.C., and that is going, when the money runs out, which we are already seeing in other countries, when they realize that it's happened here, we're going to see wholesale riots in this country as well. Yes.
And let me add a little bit to that conversation about Wisconsin. What happened was the governor said that these public pensions, we just don't have the money. And that was honest. That's true. Okay, that was an honest thing to say. Let me tell you what is dishonest. There are two categories of monies that are paid out. They are benefits and earnings. Everything fits into one or the other.
Right.
Your pay, your compensation is obviously an earning. Welfare, right. Medicare, Medicaid, those are benefits. Now, benefits can be taken away under any set of circumstances. Even if they're called entitlements, legally, you're not entitled to them. They're benefits. They're privileges.
Right.
But earnings belong to you. So when I go to work for you and you, as part of our working contract, say that if I'm there for 20 years, I receive a certain amount, and every 2 weeks a certain amount goes into that fund, okay, to support my pension. That's a contract. That's part of my earnings. I've done the work. You owe me the money. You cannot say we don't have the money. Because if you went out and spent the money that I put in or that you put in for my earning, you spent my money. That's criminal conversion.
Well, yeah, and we've already been experiencing that for at least a decade with Social Security.
Well, but you see, Social Security is not an earning. Social Security is actually a benefit. So it's not the same. These people.
No. The money I put into Social Security, I have tens of thousands of money that I paid into Social Security.
No, not the same, Richard, because if you read the Social Security application instructions that are about 10 pages long, you'll see the money goes right into the general fund. You have no guarantee of getting anything back. But when you get a pension, it's a different category. And so even though the governor...
But it's still my money that I put in there.
Nope, you believe that. But legally it's not the case, not in Social Security. But in a pension, it actually is. And so while the governor was being honest, the set of circumstances that reaches a point where they don't pay the public pensions is itself systemically criminal. That was
I don't doubt that at all. Yeah, but I've actually been thinking, so let me ask you this. I've been talking to some constitutional lawyers, and you know some of them, as to whether or not I could sue the federal government to get my Social Security back. You're acting like I can't do it. Why?
You can, but in order to do so, the first thing you have to do is rescind the number itself on the basis of fraud. On the basis of fraud, all agreements are off the table, and you can sue to get your money back. But without doing that, no, you cannot. Because, and I'm telling you, this is how it will come out in the courts. Social Security is a benefit. When you pay money into it, it doesn't go into an account for you. It goes into the general fund and gets spent on whatever the Congress, whatever the president decides to spend it on. Now, when you turn retirement age and it's time to get money out, it comes from the general fund. Now, they call it the Social Security Trust Fund, but there is no actual fund set aside. It's just a label that they put there, and it's a category they use. So no, you will not get it.
Haven't they said though that they are trying, that they maybe not in the contract, as the 10 pages you were talking about, but haven't they told us publicly that your money will be there, or that your money at least goes to pay some other retiree, and that it sits in the account?
Yes, that's a way of explaining it so you understand. But what I'm saying is that's just a way of explaining. That's like I'm sitting there and I'm a wheeler dealer and I'm juggling all my funds to make sure no one finds out what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And then I have to explain it to you in such a way that you don't catch on. That's what's happening. Richard, okay. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll call you when I'm not on the show, and I'll have a more in-depth discussion with you on this.
All right. Well, I would love that because I have really been serious about suing over the Social Security issue.
I can give you some key info. I'm very, very knowledgeable about this. So yeah, I'll give you a call. It won't be immediately after the show, but a little later.
But let's not get away from this main point.
No, I don't.
First of all, the main point is we are bankrupt. The United States of America is bankrupt. We have no money. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, the Washington, D.C. is bankrupt. I still have a little bit of money in my bank account, but I don't trust that being there. I worry about it. And so, I have bought a little silver. I really can't afford too much gold, but I've bought some silver, and I use that as my savings account more than trusting a bank to do it, because I think banks are going to fall. But the biggest concern I have is that locally we're not getting it fast enough. The answer and solution is in my books that you already mentioned, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, county commissions working with, and the reason I really am glad you brought that part up is because I'm finishing a book right now called The Magic of Gun Control. And that will probably be in my website within a week, so we can get that out to you as well. But I do want to send you my novel, and I want everybody to go to my website, sheriffmack.com, and get these tools that are there. And if somebody just loves to read, and you love, or even if you don't love to read, you will love The Naked Spy. It is the best spy thriller in the world. And again, a lot of the things in the book actually, literally, happen to me or other people in the police departments or sheriff's offices that I work for, including part of the very first chapter that is a high-speed pursuit that's really amazing.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that.
Anyway, it's a great book, and again, I want to make it into a movie.
Yeah,
but
I want to.
What really has me concerned about what's going on today is Jon Stewart. Have you seen any of Jon Stewart's satire on Ron Paul?
Over the years, I've seen him do stuff. I don't know if I've seen anything recently. No,
it's very recent.
No,
and it's because the national media. Tell Lee to email me, and I'll email this back to her, or anybody else for that matter. But anyway, Jon Stewart on the Daily Show makes fun of the national media because they're tripping over themselves and in an almost illegal fashion, trying to marginalize Ron Paul or to ignore him entirely. And I find it, John Daly's satire on it was so dead on target that he just made me laugh. And I said, man, this guy is really calling it straight. I really can't believe that Jon Stewart had the guts to get on the Daily Show and do this and expose the national media for the liars and dishonest pieces of human excrement that they really are. And here they are talking about Rick Santorum, who finished fourth in a poll, and they talk about the first and second place guys, and they didn't talk about number three. And of course, who's number three?
Ron
Paul.
Richard, yeah. I just posted on my website, freedomradio.us, and folks, you might want to check this out. I just had it posted earlier today. It's an image from the Fox News poll the online poll directly following the Republican debate from what was it, last week. And they did an online poll, and a viewer had one of these, he had his laptop up and everything, and he went online and he plugged in his vote, and apparently it shows you on your screen who you voted for and, what the totals and such are.
Right.
And he took a screenshot and put it up online. I got a hold of it, and it's up on our website. It shows that he voted for Ron Paul, and the vote was credited to, who was it? Newt Gingrich, I think. Right there on the same screen. It says, you voted for Ron Paul, and then it shows you right there who got your vote, and it wasn't Ron Paul. This was on Fox News online, so, to the point of what you're saying about media.
Yeah, well, yeah, and my book deals with that a lot, and so do my other book, but the main thing with this is I have maintained, and you've seen this in my book as well, The County Sheriff America's Last Hope, that one of the reasons why I don't hold out any hope for Ron Paul or any hope for Washington, D.C., is because Washington, D.C. is so corrupt, and the media is so corrupt, and they want to keep Washington, D.C. and maintain this corrupt status quo in Washington, D.C., and so where can we turn as a people if we really want freedom?
Well, and
that is in your county.
And here is what I wanted to make sure I asked you, because earlier we were talking about the riots. You know as well as I do, if riots do break out in the U.S., we can expect to see stepped-up police presences throughout the country. Now, in the event this occurs, taking into account the growing education of sheriffs out there, what do you think the role of the militia groups will be?
Well, I hope that the sheriffs will ask the militia groups for help. And the smart sheriffs are now preparing posses and militia groups to be part of his department, to be part of his office. and to be underneath his tutelage and his direction and leadership. If we have sheriffs doing that, then we're going to be ready. And what you want your sheriff to do is to tell the federal government, look, I've got things under control here. We don't need you. Go on to L.A. or Las Vegas or Chicago or Detroit where they really need you. And what concerns me there is, you're going to be able to do that sort of thing if you're not in a major metropolitan area. And so that part really scares me. Also, it scares me that they're going to bring in UN troops or foreign troops to help settle things down here in America. And those two things really have me very concerned. And we've got to get our sheriffs on board, being prepared, following the oath of office, following the Constitution, and making sure they're there to protect their citizens.
Well, how are we doing along those lines? How many sheriffs are there in the United States? Do you know?
About 3,100.
Okay. How are we doing in terms of getting sheriffs who are indeed?
I could list you dozens of names. Right now there's some real wonderful sheriffs across the country. Sheriff Glenn Palmer's probably the most constitutional sheriff right now of anybody. He lives in a small county, Grant County, Oregon, on the eastern side of Oregon. Sheriff Brad Rogers in Indiana, another real good man, and actually a Ron Paul supporter. They are out there. I could just go down the list and name you a lot of good sheriffs. How many of those sheriffs, though, are actually getting prepared and willing to stand and making sure that they're ready? It's still far too few that are actually seeing what's coming.
Yeah, and that's my concern. And then the other side of it, I just a couple of weeks ago, I had on Gil Gilbertson from Oregon, sheriff from Oregon.
And he's one of them. He's one of them.
He seems to be one of them, but he was also talking about how BLM was invading his county, essentially, and the way they go about doing it is through federal funds. And when the funds are accepted, there's a concession of jurisdiction, and it interferes, and it combines jurisdictions. We need to be willing to say no to the federal funds, and I don't know that the will to do that is there.
Yeah, that's part of my presentation. You have to turn that back. And Gil admits that he does take funds and that his county has for quite a while. And he and I have sat down and talked about it before, quite frankly. But everyone listening to your program today needs to read the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. Because you cannot ask your sheriff to do something that you're completely ignorant of. You have to know and understand these principles and how I connected all the dots in this marvelous 50-page book that can show you that the sheriff really does have the authority and the power and the jurisdictional authority to protect you from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and that he has actually the duty to protect you from tyranny and other abuse of government. And that's why we have got to start with this ABC approach and this building block approach of making sure that your sheriff is a constitutional sheriff and that he's ready. Just as I was when I sued the federal government, I was ready to do that because I was already following American ideals and reading and understanding the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And so we have got to start this process and this educational process within your own heart, within the citizens of this country, and then spread this to the sheriffs. And believe me, I'm traveling. You can look at my schedule on my website, and you can see I'm traveling every week to try to train people and sheriffs on board. And my training seminar was just now certified. I got notice today, certified as law enforcement training in the state of South Carolina.
Oh, fantastic. Have you seen any signs of civil unrest or growing civil unrest in your travels? And if so, in what parts of the country?
Well, I haven't seen it personally. I can tell you that there's always somebody there at some of the meetings who feels so frustrated that they feel like doing it. And I will say, luckily, that those numbers are few because I tell people, look, this is a peaceful process and we can still take back our country peacefully. There's some major cities that I've been to that people have warned me, look, don't go downtown. We're having problems and there's lots of violence. And I will tell you that some of the people have warned me to be very careful about contact with the local police. And I will say specifically that one was Denver, where you have to really be careful with the police.
Oh yeah, I've heard tales about Denver. Yeah.
And so, it's a little bit scary when you live in a country where you cannot trust the police like that. And whether it's true or not, people still feel that way.
Well, and that.
But I will say though that I believe there's still a lot of good sheriffs out there. I believe there's a lot of good police officers out there. If there were not, I would be doing something else. I have to reach out, especially to sheriffs. They have to, one, keep their oath of office, or two, we have to find someone who will. And even with this movement, I don't believe we're going to get a vast majority of sheriffs to keep their oath of office, at least not very soon. And so what I want people to know and understand, if we get a few sheriffs to do it, if we get even 20%, 25%, we're going to win this and we're going to keep it peaceful. And so one, having sheriffs on board will be effective in this freedom movement, and two, it'll keep this freedom movement peaceful, and that's what I'm all about.
Well, now, interesting thing, you just raised a point, and it occurs to me, do you ever go to areas, counties where the sheriff is just, not at all constitutional sheriff, and do you encourage people in the community to displace him? In other words, I don't know, you go to a county where you just got a bum sheriff, and you're sitting there and you're finding out, who might be a candidate for sheriff, and let's get you into the office of sheriff, and will you do the right things? Do you do that?
No question about it, yes. That has happened, and yes, I do say that. If a sheriff has made it clear that he will not keep his oath, that he will not follow the Constitution, for whatever reason, maybe he reads Time magazine and they've convinced him that, like in their 4th of July issue of this year, that the Constitution no longer applies, that we're a much more sophisticated society and that the Constitution is elastic and antiquated. There's some people that I say, look, you have two alternatives. You can find some way to replace your sheriff and vote him out of office or get him out of office even sooner if you can, which is very rare and very difficult, or you can move. And we are going to list on our website with the CSPOA, you can see the CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officer Association website on my other website, which is sheriffmack.com, and you'll be able to see it. What we're going to do is we're going to vet every sheriff in the United States, and we're going to put their response on there, and we're going to tell people this is the likelihood of your sheriff being a constitutional sheriff. Right now we have a lot of sheriffs running as constitutional sheriffs, or candidates running as constitutional sheriffs in Pennsylvania and other places. This is an election year for sheriffs in some states, and this movement has had a tremendous impact on how candidates even run for sheriff. And so I want all of your listeners to know this is real. It is the only solution we have left. If any of you believe that Washington, D.C. is going to correct itself, then I've got beachfront property for you in Omaha. It's not going to happen in Washington, D.C.
And I've got a piece of a really nice bridge in New York.
Yes. and so we have to look inward. The only answer we have is what Jefferson said at the local level. And even Jefferson said the sheriff was the top executive in the county. And so we have got to look inward. And I believe that if we put the right information in front of some of these good sheriffs, they'll start doing the right thing, as Sheriff Gilbertson's trying to do, and as Sheriff Glenn Palmer has done and is doing. And you can get his story on my website.
Now, that raises another question. Now, throughout the U.S. today, police forces are staffing their agencies with military veterans. That is now the norm. And that has brought about a distinct military flavor to America's police. It really looks like a police state in many areas. Now, doesn't that dynamic create a somewhat adversarial relationship between sheriffs and their deputies and the police, like you said in Denver?
Well, it does, and what we have seen across the country is this SWAT team mentality that leadership has failed to address and to remedy. And when we have literally the Department of Education sending in a SWAT team to collect unpaid student loans, then you know our country has gone into a police state. And when sheriffs like Sheriff Dudnick in Tucson, Arizona, are actually justifying using a SWAT team to kill a man who they were just serving a search warrant on, not an arrest warrant, but just doing a search warrant. And when nothing illegal was in the home, and yet this man is still dead, and that all of that's okay, you know that our SWAT team mentality has gone way too far, and we are suffering right now from the effects of a police state. Our founding fathers warned us against a police state. They warned us against a welfare state. They warned us against gun control. They warned us about spending money we don't have, and yet we do all of it today and think we're going to be fine. Well, we're not fine, and we better turn this back while there's still a chance.
Yeah, and we don't really listen. Some of us listen, and unfortunately the majority of people are too easily swayed by what's going on around, or what they think is supposed to be going on around them. Let's talk the depression. Now, I don't make any bones about this. I don't care what they call it. It's a depression. It's an economic depression. Ask anybody out there. Do you believe such a state of affairs economically adds to or reduces the number of incidents of rights violations of citizens by police or sheriff's deputies or government in general?
Say that again.
Do you think the fact that we're in a depression
yeah,
causes there to be an increase or a reduction in the number of incidents of having people's rights violated by either police or sheriff's deputies, or even just by government in general?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any question about that, because we're in this state of high alert because of the economy, and that the dangers of riots are there, and that puts cops and police departments and our law enforcement leaders, our sheriffs, in a hold on to your gun attitude and mentality. And so there's no question about that. And look at the riots and how they were handled. Bring in more cops, and I believe that this is all part of the grand scheme of things, that they want to be able to subjugate us all the more. And if you look at what's going on, I just don't think, first of all, I think you are exactly correct. We are in a depression, and when people have this spigot turned off, it's going to happen here in America. It's already starting. And the trust between the people and the local law enforcement just is not there today, and that's going to cause even more of those problems that you're asking about. And I'll tell you what, you do not want to be in a major metropolitan area.
No, I say the same thing to people. And it's my understanding also that police all over are trained through federal programs. The training that I've been told this by law enforcement people and people, been in the families for generations, police or sheriff's families, that it used to be the states trained the police, but that the federal government, Washington again, took it over some years back, and that's why there's such a vanilla. That's why you see what happens in Arizona. It also happens in Indiana, and
well, I don't think the training has changed location. But
is it now? Is it now sourced by the federal government? Is it the federal government is controlling the training?
No, I don't think so. What has happened is, yes, there is a higher amount of influence from Washington, D.C., but the training still happens at the local level. And what really bothers me about the local level of law enforcement is that they still bow down to Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. can take it over if they want to, because the local officials simply do not have the wherewithal and the courage to stand against Washington, and that is what we have to have.
And that's what I meant. That was exactly what I meant, that the influence coming from, I know the training takes place.
Yeah, there's no question.
But the federal government is now in there pretty much telling what to do.
No question. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
From the chat room, Deputy Donut, we need to get these sheriffs in different states to start talking amongst themselves, get to a common ground. Is that going on? Is that happening?
That's one of the things I am trying to do, and yes, it is happening. I have these meetings with sheriffs all across the country. It is starting to happen. Again, we have got to increase this, and your listeners have got to get involved with this because I can't do it alone. And we have got to reach out to these sheriffs. There is not a sheriff in this country who does not know about this movement and who does not know about my book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. I'm going to tell you right now, there's not 1% of the sheriffs who aren't already familiar with this. 99% of your sheriffs are familiar with this. Now they have got to hear from you. And they work for you. They don't work for me. You know, they can read my book and say, fine, he doesn't live in my county. He doesn't vote for me. They have got to hear from you. They have got to see that you have this book in your hand. They've got to know that you know it, and they've got to hear from you. And that's when I love it. And that's when this program is really going to take off.
So what you say, let's get people involved. Okay. People say, what can I do?
First, get the book, read the book, know and understand it, and then talk to your sheriff about it. Ask him, have you read the book? And then get his response either way, and then get his feelings about the book. And then ask him, will you sponsor training in your sheriff's office for other sheriffs and deputies to have Sheriff Mack's training? And some have already done that. We've done that. We did it in Amarillo, Texas over a year ago. And this is happening. And we did it at Sheriff Palmer's in Grant County, Oregon. And Sheriff Gilbertson and some other sheriffs there have been to it. And we've done it in Utah and Idaho. And we've just got to do this a lot more. And that's where you, the people, come in. You have got to do this. Get the book. Show your sheriff you know and understand what's there. Get your sheriff trained. Have me come out, do the class, whatever we can do, make sure this happens. And we're probably going to have to get other people to do the class because I'm telling you what, I am just going from state to state and town to town doing this right now.
In 30 seconds or less, what do you foresee for America through the end of the year and beyond?
I see the depression becoming much more acute, and I see the lines being divided much stronger between government and people searching for freedom. We have got to be ready. You have got to do things locally. Be prepared for that, what's coming.
My guest has been Sheriff Richard Mack, www.sheriffmack.com. Sheriffmack.com. And you got to check out the book, The Naked Spy. I'm really looking forward to that, Richard. I really am. And I will call you, I promise. www.sheriffmack.com. Richard, thanks so much. God bless you, and just keep it up, please. You are making such a difference.
Sure, Brent. See you soon.
All right. Richard Mack,